Hello everyone! In the next two lessons, we will focus on drawing eyes, one of the most important and expressive elements of the face. Eyes convey mood, character, and make the face come alive. We will try to make them as realistic and harmonious as possible. Let's get started. So friends, let's begin drawing our eye. Before we start, I want to warn you, at some point while drawing a portrait, it may seem to you that it doesn't look right. And you might think, maybe I should start over. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Don't rush to get upset, because first we need to build up tone, draw all the details, and only then will we correct and adjust things if something doesn't look right. The first thing I want to show you is the pencils I'll be using. 4B, 2B, HB, and 2H for light areas. We'll start with the dark parts. The darkest area here is the pupil. On the pupil, we see highlights. This will be the lightest spot. The white of the eye around the pupil will be a little darker, just slightly. The iris will be mid-tone. The darkest areas are the pupil itself and the eyelashes. Let's start shading the pupil. I'll take the softest pencil, 4B, and carefully shade around the highlight. Gently. Now, let's draw the upper dark part of the pupil. Around the perimeter of the pupil, it will also be darker than in the center. So we can also emphasize these areas. So the upper part of the pupil will be in shadow because of the eyelashes casting a shadow. The part above the highlight and the right side of the highlight will be slightly lighter. Always check against the reference photo while shading. Next, let's add tone to the iris area. First, I'll take an HB pencil and go over it lightly. Then, if necessary, we'll make it darker. We go over the entire iris with a light touch. One even tone. Then I'll take a 2B pencil and add shading where the photo shows darker areas, especially on the right side. And what do we see? We notice the highlight is too small. Let's take a kneaded eraser or a thin eraser and make it a little bigger. Adjusting the triangular shape with rounded edges. Then we'll darken certain parts slightly. Here we darken slightly more. This part will also be a little darker than it is now, so we add tone here. Here I went a bit too dark, and with a kneaded eraser we can slightly remove tone where we overdid it. What else do we see? We can slightly enlarge the pupil because it looks a bit too small. We can add just a little here. And also a little shadow above the highlight. A little shadow here. I think this is enough for now. Let's now take the 2H pencil and lightly shade the sclera of the eye. Since the sclera and the eye itself have a rounded form, at the edges it will be slightly darker. So we will add a bit more shadow here. This way we will make the eye more three-dimensional. Now let's draw the tear duct. It will be darker in tone than the inner part, so we can take the HB pencil. And shade inside. Now let's add the eyelashes to our eye. We will draw the eyelashes with the stroke which I showed under number 3. It will be a raised stroke. But the part where the eyelashes begin, we can mark right away. For example, let's take the 4B pencil. It will be about the same tone as the pupil. We also observe from the photo where it is. So here there is an eyelash. Press a little harder with the pencil. And let's draw this area where the eyelashes begin. Approximately here they begin to curve. And now let's sketch where the eyelashes go. The eyelashes have different thicknesses, so we pay attention to where they are thicker, that is closer to the root, and further they taper off. The eyelashes in this part of the eye are a little longer. They go beyond the eyelid line. All the others, looking at the photo, I see that they will extend this far. In this part, they don't go over. Here we just add shadow. Draw the main lashes visible in the photo approximately. The rest we can imagine. But don't overdo it. Here, in this part, one lash overlaps another and goes a bit to this side. Here there is a little gap, and then they start curving this way. Here we add a little shadow behind the eyelashes. For now, they look very sharp, but when we add shadows on the eyelid, it will look more natural. Let's first finish drawing all the eyelashes. Always compare constantly with the photo, with our reference. At the edges, they will curl more. Then in the middle, and on the left side too, as a rule, the lashes curl more than in the central part of the eye. Here we have the fold of the eyelid. We can indicate it slightly. Let's add the shadow that goes behind the eyelashes. We can take a 2B pencil so as not to make it too dark. The closer to the lashes, the darker. 2B isn't enough. I'll take 4B to make it a bit darker. And when the shadow approaches the eyelid itself, it fades slightly. Again, following the form. When we add tone behind the eyelashes themselves become a little lighter, so we will need to strengthen them as we build up the tone to make them more expressive. Here, this part is slightly lighter than here. Pay attention to this and reduce the pressure on the pencil. Here, it looks like we are missing volume. It looks like a kind of hole. I can add a little more tone. Shadow. Now, let's draw the eyelid line. Make it a bit stronger, because it got lost. With very light strokes. Also, always look at the photo, not from memory, to see how it goes in the reference. Here, we see that the eyelashes also begin to fade a bit, so we will draw them again along the entire line. These ones can be made a little longer. Here we see there's a bit of shadow from the eyelashes, so we can add a little shadow here with light shading. Pay attention to how I hold the pencil. Now add a shadow under the right eyelashes. We see that here it is a little darker. Our eyelashes grow from the eyelid, not from the eye itself. Here we have a little space. Let's add another eyelash. It will be lighter than the others, and one goes downward. Let's finish the tear duct. Here we have more shadow. Now we can take the 2H pencil and slightly add tone. We'll tone the lower eyelid lightly, like this. Since the face is not white, it still has a slight tone. We cannot leave it just white paper. Some tone must be present, and we will adjust it during the process, matching it to the tones of the other parts of the face. Here it even seems a bit darker. And here too it will be slightly darker. We will always return to the areas where we seemed to have finished, but when we add tone to other parts of the face, some areas may get lost. So we will gradually return to different areas of our work. Let's shade the area around the eye. We see that here it will roughly end. We mark it slightly, and here it will curve away. Start shading lightly. In this part, it will be a little lighter. But at the bend, we again add a shadow. So let's mark it denser, darker. Blend so we don't get sharp lines, so that instead of shadow, we don't get wrinkles that aren't there. That's why everything should be blended smoothly. Let's strengthen the shadow here. Let's take the HB pencil, because 2H isn't enough. And we'll add more shadow here. Pay attention to the form. And further, it gradually fades into light. The part above the eyelid will also be darker. Let's add tone here. Blend carefully, don't rush. Here it is darker too. We constantly compare with the reference. I am not inventing from my head, but looking at the photo. And I see that in this part we have a small mistake. We can slightly add the eyelid. Make it a little wider. And also at the bottom. And let's draw the lower lashes. They are not very visible, so we will make them somewhat blurry. Show the line roughly how they go. Somewhere here they end, and draw a very light line. In some places, we can indicate separate little lashes, lightly again. Here, they will already be blurry. Here, too, we have a semicircular shadow. It's not very distinct in the photo, but it exists. Since the eyelid also has a semicircular form that goes into the brow. So here it will be just like this. The closer to the eyelid line, the darker, and further away it fades to lighter. We make a smooth gradient. Next, we see that here it will be darker than in this part. So we add even more shadow here. It's hard to get the shadow right immediately, so for now we sketch it approximately. And later, when we shade the rest of the face, we can tell exactly where and how the shadow goes when we look at the whole drawing. I think here we can take the 2B pencil to make it a little darker. So gradually, step by step, the shadow becomes denser. And here too, we see that now it lacks shadow, so we add more shadow under the eye on the right side. And here we will have some slight wrinkles. We will show them later. Take the 2H pencil and lightly show these wrinkles. Don't press hard so as not to overdo it. And the second one. Here they are a little darker at the point where they meet. Here we need to add a little more shadow because the eyelid line got lost. This way, the eye starts to gain volume. Then we look at the other shadows, how they fall, but we will adjust this later when we build up the full tone of the face. And then our shadow will go further, onto the forehead, the nose, and so on. I think at this stage we can stop. Well, finally, the portrait is beginning to come alive. In the next lesson, we will draw the other eye, and you will begin to notice how our portrait starts to transform and look more like the photo. See you soon!